Thank you, Sue, for that beautiful rendition of a beautiful song. Thank you, Reverend TJ, for inviting me into your pulpit this morning. And thank you to Dr. Michelle for her kind words and that beautiful story. It is still resonating with me and reminds me of evening worship on Star Island, one of our UU camps and conference centers in New Hampshire. Each one of us must carry a lamp along the path for evening prayer, and the parade of lamps toward the stone chapel there is just as beautiful as you described in that town in your story. I'm grateful for that memory. Our reading this morning came from the early graphic novels of the writer Neil Gaiman. I am new to Gaiman's work as a reader, but I have been hearing about him from my UU colleagues for years. So I'm beginning to read him. I've come to understand his appeal to so many of them. His fantasy worlds bear so much resemblance to our own fraught and nuanced existence. Among the many happenings surrounding this ninth book of a 12-book series, the character I quote, Rose Walker, is writing in her journal on her way to visit a lonely woman who is dying of AIDS, the great plague of which we knew so little when this story was written. The sometimes irrational fear of a disease we did not understand and could not treat was a constant presence in life in the 1980s. I can remember standing in hospital hallways with college friends abandoned on gurneys, left alone to die because few nurses would touch them. I lost friends and colleagues by the dozens before the so called drug cocktail put a screeching halt to death after death after death. I'm still in touch with a few people who cashed out their pensions and waited to die, then realized that their disease would not kill them, and with great joy had to return to work. Thus it is that this new plague of COVID 19 feels so frightening and yet so familiar to some of us. What is not familiar, however, is this lightning speed with which science identified the virus sequence, set to work to create a vaccine, recruited volunteers to test it, produce and distribute millions of vials, and start to get it into arms so that you and I might get back to what we refer to as normal life. Key to that speed was knowledge, knowledge gleaned by scientists from all the illnesses before. It makes sense to me that the man we most trust about this virus, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has spent most of his career working on the AIDS virus. But he was hardly the only dedicated person working on the frontiers of scientific knowledge to save lives. I watched an interview just last Friday with the lead scientist for the development of the Moderna vaccine, a 36-year-old black woman named Dr. Kizmizia Corbett. From a small town in North Carolina, Dr. Corbett had wanted to be a scientist since she was 16 years old. It was her hunger to learn and discover, leading directly to work on coronaviruses for 6 years before working on the vaccine that I had the privilege to receive 3 months ago. We will never know all the names of those who worked with Dr. Fauci and Dr. Corbett, but we can be forever grateful for their commitment to learning and understanding and to knowledge on behalf of a greater good, learning and studying and practicing again and again, and have their knowledge increase. I grew up in a home in which knowledge was the holy grail. My parents were the children of sharecroppers, so their education was minimal. Mom went to the third grade and dad went to sixth grade, so school was the most important thing in my family. My father was blunt about it. Education is the only thing the white man can't take from you, he told us over and over and over. They can't get to what's inside your head. It's one reason he sent us to Catholic schools. He believed that nuns and priests were people who took both school and religion seriously. You might guess, rightly, that the Catholic Church and I found we had irreconcilable differences. There were some things about being Catholic that I missed, though. grounding rituals like the rosary. I miss. Others, not so much. Not being able to serve Mass because I'm a woman. I don't miss that so much. What I did often miss in my old parish, St. Ambrose, and tried to duplicate when I served in my UU congregation in New York, was the Catholic commitment to teaching the stories of the faith and giving us tools to live it out each day. The stories that I heard at St. Ambrose about saints, particularly the martyrs, led to some pretty bizarre playground episodes, I will admit. But they also got us to thinking about what we would be willing to do to protect our faith and to stand up for it. Much as I love being a Unitarian Universalist, much as I love our faith, I sometimes worry about it. I worry in part because we are often unwilling to commit to helping others find out about us. And when they do discover us, learn enough about our faith to join with us and to bring others with them. Yes, I am using the E word, evangelism. We are terrible about sharing the good news about Unitarian Universalism. I often say that many of us are the first to call a friend about a great new restaurant, but we would sink through the floor before inviting that friend to church. But in these late pandemic days, it is no longer a question of whether we can increase our membership by dragging people in on Bring a Friend Sunday. We are living in a world that is in big, big trouble, and with people who are deeply troubled. In fact, we are some of those deeply troubled people. Our help is not to be found in the acquisition of things, or in an immersion in our work, or with a concentration on leisure. We can't do those things the way we used to. And it's not that there is not a certain consolation in those distractions, but the truth is their capacity to teach us what we have found we really need to know is limited. That capacity has always been limited. We just didn't realize it with the same depth we do now. The more we know we need more. Ministers like Reverend TJ, like me, are trained to lead congregations, to look at the big picture, to try to discern the future of our faith in that little space, to grasp the pastoral needs among our people, and to meet them as they arise, to preach a message of resistance and hope and joy, to be heard most Sunday mornings. We learn to love you, and we work hard at helping you learn to love us. We also work at responding to that list that Rose Walker makes, the list of things no one teaches you in school. The issues of learning to love, sitting lightly with acclaim, ways of thinking about money and meeting others with integrity, ways of tapping into deep wells of empathy and walking beside those in the valley of the shadow. All the really important things that have become oh so very important in our pandemic present. We can preach about these things at regular intervals. In fact, we usually do. And we know that you listen that day. Perhaps even think about something we've said while you're brushing your teeth before bed. But soon sleep intrudes, and so do the cares of the day and the pressures of your life. And the high-mindedness of Sunday afternoon gives way to the relentlessness of Monday morning, or even the terror of a sleepless Sunday night. We need more. All of us need support to know what we know and to learn what we don't yet know. We need schools for our spirits as well as for our minds, and a consistent way to examine what else we might need for our life's journey with all its twists and turns. We need education for this world, specifically religious education. Not catechism, not Bible verse memorization, but education that embraces the ancient meaning of the word religion, religare, which means to bind together. We need education that helps us to unite the fragments of our complex lives. And we will need that education all of our lives. Once upon a time, UUs tended to think of religious education as a niche need parents utilized once their kids were too old for the church nursery and too young to sit with the grown-ups. Let me add that even that assumption is shaped by class and culture. Before discovering Unitarian Universalism, I had never before seen a church where children were separated from the adults for any part of the service. In my church, we were always there from beginning to end. Once I got used to that, I was just as surprised to learn that there was nothing else adults did as a regular part of faith formation in UU congregations. Sometimes they sang in the choir, or they joined the board or the worship committee. But that was work. That was service. I could not wrap my head around how people grew in their faith. Religious education across the lifespan helps us to answer some basic questions. How have I grown in my faith? What or who has helped me and supported me in becoming a better Unitarian Universalist? What would I say to Rose Walker if she came to speak with me tonight? Has church helped to teach me how to love, how to end a relationship, how to speak when someone is dying, how to face death myself? These and many other things are things we need to know throughout our lives. We don't learn them in college. They don't come from what my parents called book learning. But they do come, not just through Sunday sermons, but in the course of lifespan religious education. It is this lifelong learning about our faith that protects us from people who think that being a UU means you can believe anything you want. It's the specific training of these religious educators, some ordained ministers, some not, who help give all of us the tools to strengthen the practice of our faith, even if it isn't something like a rosary. Lifespan religious education is one of the most worthwhile investments a congregation can make. It's true that offering an expansive RE program can often draw new families to a congregation, and that is a fantastic reason to do it. But it's just as important to make that investment, even if you never see a kid at all. All of you who are here now deserve to invest in yourselves and in the spiritual foundations that will uphold you throughout your life, even if we never see another pandemic like this in our lifetimes. No matter how long we live, we will see something else we don't understand. And of all the places where we learn those things that are most worthwhile, learning them in our congregations should be at the top of the list. In my years in the parish, I quickly learned that I could not do my job as well as I wanted to without the partnership of a trained religious educator. Together, we could plan our upstairs-downstairs strategy, a way of choosing themes in religious education curricula that mirrored one another. Our goal was to choose themes that were echoed in my sermon and in the lessons for the kids and teens, so that even if a family was not in the same room on Sunday for every minute, they were talking about the same set of ideas together. We imagined a family walking home from church on Sunday afternoon, talking about what they'd heard or learned that day, and discovering that no matter how old or how young each person was, they could grasp a couple of common ideas that they could talk about together. Lifespan religious educators support a congregation's ministry. They support the work of a called minister. Most of all, they support each member of a congregation in their search to answer the most important, most intense questions we encounter throughout our lives. Their work helps bind together all of us as a people of faith. Together, we become a little less afraid a little more resilient, a little more conversant with the crucial things we need to know. And the more we know, the more we learn together, the better our lives become. May it be so. Amen. Please join in singing our hymn of reflection. My life flows